Welcome back to this week's content on Red Dead Redemption 2. A little while ago, I posted a video detailing one fact from every campaign mission in the title, and in turn, several of my viewers requested I make one on every side mission, 27 in total. So today, here it is. If you enjoyed what you see, be sure to hit like, subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first alerted every time a new video is produced. I'll be posting these more or less in the order that they are introduced into the title, and please be aware that there will be spoilers ahead. As you can probably tell from the thumbnail, we are doing a Christmas giveaway in the video, so please stick around to find out how to enter completely free and give yourself a chance at winning one of 3 prizes. You're listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and let's begin with today's video. One fact about every side quest, Red Dead Redemption 2. Starting things off with number 1, a test of faith. In the Heartlands, the player can meet up with Deborah McGinnis, a paleontologist who's out to prove a lot of stuck-up buffoons wrong. After a short conversation, Deborah asks the player for assistance in finding and informing her of more bone locations. If the player has previously found one, such as the one at the oil derricks, a slightly alternative scene will play out between the player and Deborah.
Listen, if you find any of these bones around the country, send them to my homestead at Furwood Rise in Cumberland Forest, or mail me the locations. I'll reward you handsomely for your efforts.
Actually, I think I found some. Here.
Excellent. I will go and investigate.
Number 2. A better world, a new friend. In several locations, such as the train station in Valentine, you can find posters pinned up from a lady known as Miss L. Hobbs. Miss Hobbs is seeking the assistance of anyone with hunting capabilities to track down a variety of animals. This side quest is in several parts, with each part completed rewarding the player with fundings. After completing all of the hunting requests, the player will receive a letter of invitation from Mrs. Hobbs, inviting them to visit her at her home just outside of Strawberry. When doing so, a scene will play out, with the player receiving a squirrel statue as a final gift. When you reach the epilogue, at John's home of Beecher's Hope, a new stranger marker will appear. This prompts John to place the squirrel upon his fireplace, introducing a cutscene between himself and Abigail.
What is that?
It's art.
Oh, that's what they call it.
In at number 3, American Dreams. There are 3 separate grotesque scenes spaced around the world of Red Dead Redemption 2. Finding all 3 scenes and piecing together a torn map will reveal this to be all the work of a serial killer, known as Edmund Lowry. Using the fully pieced map, the player can now head to Edmund's secret hideout. Arriving there, they will walk in to a gruesome scene, before being taken captive by the killer himself. After escaping and transporting Edmund to the local sheriff's office in Valentine, a short scene will occur, with Sheriff Malloy attempting to place Edmund in a cell. Things quickly turn sour for the sheriff as Edmund attacks. Immediately, the player is prompted with saving Sheriff Malloy, but did you realise that you don't have to? If the player chooses to stand idly by, the sheriff will deal with the criminal himself. But be warned, this will cost the player his reward. Number 4. Arcadia for amateurs. Upon travelling near Riggs Station to the west, the player can come across the lovable Albert Mason, a photographer who's attempting to take his skills into the wildlife region. There are several encounters with Mr. Mason. The third encounter has the player wrangling up some wild horses, so the photographer can capture their likeness. This particular mission is only available to Arthur Morgan. Those who have played the original Red Dead Redemption, which is set some years later, may remember that John Marston is unable to control a herd of horses at this point. If you decide to complete the side quest as John, this entire interaction is skipped and you will automatically move on to the next step. Number 5 today, the noblest of men and a woman. Upon entering the local tavern in the town of Valentine, the player will meet Theodore Levin and a drunken man known as Jim Boy Calloway. Theodore is a writer who is attempting to tell the tale of Calloway, specifically his days as a shootist in the Wild West, but he's having some trouble. He will provide the player with a camera and ask him to track down 4 former outlaws: Black Bess, Billy Midnight, Flaco Hernandez and Emmett Granger. The goal is to get stories about Calloway from them, but none of the interactions seem to go as planned. Something interesting about this side quest that many people may not realise is that there was initially going to be 5 outlaws instead of 4. If we delve into the game's files using mods, we can see the deleted content for ourselves. Number 6. All That Glitters. When roaming through the Heartlands, the player can encounter a self-proclaimed famous treasure hunter who goes by the name of Maximo Cristobal Valdespino. After a brief interaction, Maximo attempts to convince the player to purchase a treasure map from him, leading to the gold of the Jack Hall gang, claiming he is out of time. The player has a couple of options here. He can purchase for $10, haggle down to $5, or decline altogether. If the player either declines the purchase or somehow scares Maximo away, they can still obtain the treasure map. Heading to a local fence, you can now obtain the Jack Hall gang map, and this time it's only $1. Moving on to number 7, smoking and other hobbies. At Flatneck Station, a little into the story, sits a man who introduces himself as Phineas T. Ramsbottom. Phineas is a collector, more specifically of cigarette cards. He will prompt the player to help him acquire any cards, offering to pay him for fully completed collections. This can be quite time consuming to complete, but if you intend on doing so, there's one fact that you need to be aware of. If you have completed both the Prominent Americans and Fauners of America card sets, you must post these at the same time. Otherwise, due to an in-game glitch, whichever you choose to post first will remove the other from your collection. Number 8. The Ends of the Earth. Players travelling will discover, out in the open, a man named William. William is a collector of plants, which he uses to brew his own remedies. After a brief conversation, William makes a request from the player: help him in his search for several plants, in return for some of his medicines. The first he tasks you with is collecting a plant known as yarrow, 4 in total. This should be one of the easiest for the player to complete. During the prologue, as the gang travels to Horseshoe Overlook, a scene plays out between Arthur and Hosea, in which Hosea provides him with the very same plant. If you meet William early on, you will more than likely still have the yarrow plants on your person. In at number 9, a fisher of fish. In the southern region of the Heartlands, to the west of Scarlet Meadows, lays a dock. It's here that the player can meet the world-famous fisherman, Jeremy Gill. After introducing himself, he asks the player to aid him in capturing an array of legendary fish, 12 in total, while also providing him with a helpful map. Only 9 of these 12 can be completed by Arthur, as 3 of the legendary fish lay to the south, in Wanted territory. The player will have to wait until the epilogue of the game, when playing as John, before finally completing this side quest. Number 10 today, he's British of course. Just north of the abandoned town of Pleasance, the player can stumble across a broken down caravan. It's here they will meet an eccentric stage performer, who we learn to be called Margaret. The Englishman is in a spot of trouble and needs the player's assistance. We learn that he runs a show in which he showcases an array of wild animals from all around the globe. He tasks the player in tracking down the escaped animals: a zebra, 2 lions and a tiger. It's not long before the player realises that Margaret's show is a farce, but continues to help him anyway. It's while tracking down the final animal, last seen at Emerald Ranch, that the player learns there was some truth in Margaret. Searching for what he believes to be another dog dressed up, the player soon finds himself at the mercy of a fully grown, real-life lion and is forced to defend himself. The interesting fact about this side quest is that the lion, bearing a scar across its left eye, is actually a reference to the primary antagonist from Disney's The Lion King, Scar. In at number 11, No Good Deed. When visiting the town of Rhodes, the player will come across a gentleman who seems very nervous not to offend anyone. After speaking to the man, we learn that some thieves had stolen his medicine wagon from him in a forceful manner, even though the doctor was providing free care to the townsfolk. The player takes it upon himself to go after the wagon and deal with the criminals. When reaching Macomb's End, the player will fight his way through before finding the medicine wagon to the rear. A little fact about this mission is that if you choose to free one of the horses who lead the wagon, you can still continue with the task, and the player will even make a comment about this.
If the doctor asks, there was only one horse when I found you.
Number 12. The Iniquities of History. While still in Rhodes, the player can come across a man in a heavily drunken state, lying rough on a bench near the train station. The man, who we learn to be Jeremiah Compson, claims that he's had his whole life taken away from him unfairly. Feeling bad for Jeremiah, the player goes on to Jeremiah's former residence to collect some of his belongings: a watch, a pistol and a ledger. After exploring Compson's stead, the player learns that Jeremiah was in fact a former slaver. Grabbing the items and returning to Jeremiah's camp will conclude this mission. The player can choose to either walk away or deal with the slaver. The fact in this mission is that even if you choose to kill Jeremiah, the player will still receive a positive boost in honor rating. In at 13, a bright bouncing boy. In the city of Saint-Denis, the player can find a gentleman who we learn to be Marco Dragic. Marco is a scientist who has a dislike for the general population. Nevertheless, he needs the player's assistance to help promote his product to some investors. After a fun little mission where the player blows away some toy boats, Marco invites us to meet him up at his lab north of the map at Dover's Hill. A second encounter will have the player perform a dangerous mission, planting electric rods, once again helping Marco with his experiments. After completing this, it appears to most players that this is the end of the side quest. But did you know that if you revisit Dover's Hill sometime later, you will not only find the corpse of Marco, but some scribblings nearby, showing us that he isn't as harmless as we first thought. The scientist had a long-term plan, which was to end with world domination. 14 today, a night for it. If the player chooses to explore the bayou during nightfall, he may come across this gentleman. A conversation ensues in which we learn that the man is a local, but his home and its surroundings have been acquired by the terrifying nightfolk. He asks the player to assist him in cleaning his residence, to which a battle occurs. There isn't much of a prize at the end of this side quest, but one thing the player can obtain is the Liberty Hat. This is only one of 2 times that this is available, the other being one of the game's main missions, an American pastoral scene. On to number 15, Duchesses and Other Animals. On the outskirts of Saint-Denis, the player can beat a man called Algernon Wasp. a peculiar character with a passion for the more exquisite things in life. After a short talk and some tea, Algernon asks the player for assistance in locating and delivering several exotic flowers that can be found all over the map. An interesting fact about this mission, or more of a reference, is that the name of Algernon Wasp is a nod to the 1958 short story by author Daniel Keyes titled Flowers for Algernon. Number 16. Fundraiser. In the heart of the city of Saint-Denis, the player can approach a lady who is attempting to raise donations for a homeless shelter of former veterans. With this being a noble cause, most players will choose to contribute the asking $20. If contributed by Arthur, the lady will not only thank him, but promise that his name will appear on a plaque upon completion of the structure. In the epilogue, some years later, while now playing as John, if you choose to visit the location, you will learn that the lady kept her promise, and Arthur's name is held, among others, upon a golden plaque at the entrance. 17. Geology for beginners. Players heading northwest of the town of Strawberry may encounter a man acting in a very peculiar way. His mannerisms and the ways in which he talks are so out of touch for the time period, and the player struggles to fully understand what's being said. The man's name is Francis Sinclair, and he needs the player's assistance in locating strange rock carvings which are located in several areas of the map, 10 in total. After finally finding all of these carvings and mailing the locations to Francis's home, the player will receive an invitation to revisit the strange man, being somewhat rushed as Francis claims he'll be leaving very soon. Upon arrival, no one is home. The player enters the household to find some very strange sketchings and is soon followed in by a lady holding a small baby. After a short conversation, the player explains that he's looking for Francis. The young lady, who claims to be the mother of Francis, explains that Francis is her baby boy. Leaving confused, it seems that Francis is a time traveller of some sorts. But a very interesting fact about this mission is that it appears that the entire thing may have been a lie. With the helpful aid of mods, if you examine baby Francis very closely, you will see something of interest on the back of his neck. A label that reads the following: Maltman & Co. Now something even more interesting is back in the city of Saint-Denis, there is a toy store of the very same name. Number 18. The smell of the grease paint. In the town of Van Horn, just south of Vansburg, in the local tavern, is an unlikely duo, Miss Marjorie and Bertram. Bertram, after consuming a little too much sherry, begins to show signs of aggression, leading to a fistfight between himself and the player. After everything calms down, Miss Marjorie asks the player to track down a third member of this band of misfits, Magnifico. After finding his camp and then giving chase, the player finally corners Magnifico, and the trio are reunited. As a reward, Miss Marjorie informs the player that as payment he will receive free entry to their show. Many believe this to be a feeble excuse not to pay, but it is in fact true. If you head to the theatre in Saint-Denis sometime later, the player will inform the ticket teller of the promise made, and he will in fact get to enjoy the show absolutely free. Coming in at 19. The ties that bind us. Just outside the town of Rhodes, the player can come across two gentlemen who seem to be having a heavy disagreement with one another. The pair are alleged criminals who have escaped from a chain gang. They go on to explain that they can't get a change of clothes or even anything to eat in Rhodes, as there are several wanted posters up in town advertising a reward for their capture. They require the player to find and tear down all of the posters, 5 in total I believe. One of these posters is located on the wall of the train station. Upon collecting it, there's some hidden dialogue here that some players may have missed. The station's clerk, a man who we've met previously, Alden, is on shift today. As either Arthur or John, we can interact and question Alden on whether he believes the two escaped criminals are in fact guilty or not.
Greetings.
Partner. Oh. You know anything about these runaways? Off the chain gang?
Now, why would I know anything about that? They're either guilty as sin or innocent as lambs. Either way, I haven't been in here.
All right. Thanks.
Number 20. The Artist's Way. Players who stop off for a drink at the saloon in the eastern part of Saint-Denis may encounter a man by the name of Charles Châtenay. Charles is an artist from the country of France and has relocated himself to this city in search of both fortune and women. The player takes an immediate liking to the character and even buys him a drink. The side quests take the player through several comical circumstances, as Charles seems to land himself in trouble with the local populace. One such incident is that at the art gallery, where Châtenay is unveiling his works. It seems that the locals of Saint-Denis haven't taken too kindly to his art, and a brawl ensues in that very gallery. But one interesting thing that players may have missed during this mission is that if played as Arthur, you can find a picture of Arthur hanging on display. 21 today. The MERCIES of Knowledge. In the back alleys of Saint-Denis, the player can interact with an inventor going by the name of Andrew Bell III. After a strange request to bring him 100 gallons of moonshine, the player soon learns he's attempting to build an electric chair, claiming it will be the most compassionate way to send criminals into the afterlife. The side mission requires quite a bit of running around and comes in 7 parts in total, making it one of the largest missions in the game. Eventually, after the player has completed all of the tasks, they can witness the electric chair being put on display. But things go wrong with both the criminal and Andrew Bell III, as both fall to their demise from electrocution. One thing that people may not have realised is that afterwards, if you search the corpse of the inventor, while willing to lose a small portion of honour, on his person is the full blueprint of the electric chair, yours to keep. "22. Oh Brother." This side quest, available a little later in the game, takes the player back to the town of Valentine. Outside the general store are 2 squabbling brothers, accompanied by a lady named Helen. Both brothers, Protus and Acrisius, are in competition with one another, trying to win the fair lady's heart. This quest comes in 3 separate stages, but did you realise that there's hidden action if you do the following? If you use mods, you are able to kill off Helen, which will prompt a mix of emotions from both brothers, with one holding the other back from attacking the player.
We're waiting for you, mister. Fire away. Oh.
In Act 23, the wisdom of the elders. The inhabitants of Butcher's Creek are a strange lot, and in this side quest, we learn that they believe that the village is under some terrible curse. Playing through the missions will reveal that the villagers have been led on by an individual calling himself the Shaman. It's later revealed, of course, that in fact it has all been a scam intended to push the locals away from Butcher's Creek, and was put in place by the Roanoke Fuel Company. But a fact that have eluded many players about this mission is that even though it was revealed to be a ruse, there is a curse upon the village of Butcher's Creek, as shown in one of my previous videos. This will be linked below for those wanting to see it. Number 24. Idealism and Pragmatism for Beginners. The Mayor of Saint-Denis, by post, invites the player to join him at his residence for a conversation. The player soon learns that Mayor Henri Lemieux has a use for him and plans to put his intimidating ways to use. He tasks the player with several different missions, primarily intimidating people who disagree with him. The mayor's second-in-command, John Mark Mercier, disagrees with many of Lemur's tactics and eventually breaks free from his clutches. The mayor asks you to track down John Mark and later putting in a request to kill him. One fact that people may not be aware of is that if the player chooses to spare John Mark, the former assistant will become the future mayor of Saint-Denis after Henri was forced into an early retirement. 25 today, the veteran. Players travelling through the Grizzlies East can come across a fallen gentleman going by the name of Hamish Sinclair. Hamish asks for assistance in the returning of his horse and later invites the player to join him at his cabin for several hunting and fishing trips. The interesting thing about this mission is that of Hamish's home itself, or more importantly, its name, O'Creagh's Run. O'Creagh's Run was named after John O'Creagh, the original voice actor for Uncle, who unfortunately passed away during production. 26. The Widow of Willard's Rest. In this side mission, only available after the beginning of Chapter 5, players will meet a widowed lady by the name of Charlotte Balfour. Charlotte is new to the area and has only just recently buried her husband. The player, feeling terrible for her circumstance, can choose to help her along the way, teaching her how to hunt and how to survive out in the wilderness. Something that people may not realise is that the home of Willard's Rest during production had an entirely different name. It was originally going to be called Rocky 7. In the game's files, Charlotte Balfour is also referred to as the Rocky 7 Widow. And lastly today, number 27, the American Inferno Burnt Out. In the epilogue, now playing as John, up in the hills near tall trees, the player can encounter a stranger. The stranger is an author and reveals himself to be Evelyn Miller, one of Dutch van Willen's idols. After a brief conversation with John, he invites him to join him up at his cabin sometime later, located near Aurora Basin. After making small talk, Evelyn asks for John's assistance with something. He wants to show him something shocking. John makes the following joke.
Unless you're showing me Bigfoot, you should know. I'm not so easily shocked, Mr. Miller.
But you will be.
This, of course, is a reference to Undead Nightmare, the infamous DLC from Red Dead Redemption 1, where some years later, John would hunt down Bigfoot. Thank you all for watching today's video, and as promised, now it's time for our Christmas giveaway. On this channel, I'm giving away 3 separate vouchers, one for £50, one for £20 and one for £10. All vouchers are to be paid as gaming credit, whether it be Xbox, PlayStation or Steam. It's solely the winner's choice. Of course, if you're from outside the United Kingdom and your currency is that of euros or dollars for example, you'll receive your gift correspondingly. And it's very simple to enter. All I want you guys to do is to let me know in the comment section what is your favourite console you love to play on. As always, I'll be choosing the winners using a spinner wheel, and the closing date will be the 22nd of December 2022. The winners will be announced both on my channel's community page and over on my Instagram, which you will find both on screen and linked below. Best of luck to everyone who enters. If you enjoyed today's video, you know what to do. Thank you again for making it to the end. You've been listening to Phil, and I'll see you all in the next one.